Hi, my name is Marcus Schulkind, and for the last 51 years I've been a professional dancer, choreographer, and teacher. And I also, for the last 19 years, have been an acupuncturist. And that balance between the yin and yang being the outside dance world, and yin being the internal energies of the body, is something that I find incredibly gratifying and interesting to do. I'm one of the 5 original founders of Green Street Studios in Central Square in Cambridge. And before that, in the 51 years, I danced in some of the major companies of the world, including Lar Lubavitch, Batsheva Dance Company in Israel, Kathy Posen, Pearl Lang, Norman Walker, and a few other people as well. I started to choreograph because after having done many other people's work, I felt that I had something unique to say, and that I could say that set of ideas and thoughts better than anyone else could, since they were uniquely mine. And I thought that I had something that would touch people and move people in different ways. I started when I was in my late 20s in New York City, after I had danced in a lot of companies. And then I had for 15 years a company in New York City, and then I moved to Boston. And I had a company in Boston for approximately 12 years as well. 32 years ago, I came down from a jump incorrectly and tore an anterior cruciate, which 32 years ago was never really healed or handled very well. It took me more than 4 years to get back to dancing, because every time I almost was ready, I would keep tearing a meniscus on the same knee because they made the repair too tight. So that was the decline of my performing. I continued to perform. I continued to perform rather successfully for a while, but I was very careful as to what kinds of things I chose to perform because of the limitation of not having full range of motion in my right knee. I, in the last 5 years, have not performed other than a small cameo here or there, which was kind of fun, but I don't really go about feeling that that I have the same intentionality that I did when I was younger as a performer. So I don't really perform anymore, but it wasn't a question of the desire to look at my work more or the desire to spend more time thinking about the choreography that I was doing. It was more based on pretty much that it was over for me as a performer, and that that was a good choice, and it feels like a good choice to this day. Strangely enough, one of the first pieces I did was a piece called Job, that's based on a character from the Bible, and that came about when I was teaching at the American Dance Festival at the same time as one of my mentors, a man named Daniel Nagrin. And Daniel Nagrin had a conversation with me once at lunch where he said, "Nobody can do a good dance to a song." And I said, "I think that's a crock of shit." And he said, "Show me." So I went back into the studio and I had a piece by Randy Newman called "That's Why I Love Mankind." And if you don't know who Randy Newman is, he's perhaps one of the most ironic composers, singers, songwriters in the world. He wrote Short People and a whole hoot of very, very strange songs that are wonderful. And I did a dance that was about the character Job. And immediately, once I started performing it, critics were calling it a mini masterpiece and things like this. And for me, the greatest honor I had was Daniel came back to me and said, "Yeah, that's good." So I felt like that was a vindication. I also did 2 pieces because I was working in the last 8 or 7 years with only doing solos, which I found to be fascinating as an idea to work on, because you're not dealing with the craft of manipulating people in the form to the music. You're really dealing with one person's take and interpretation on what you've asked them to do. So I did 2 pieces for a woman named Elizabeth Waterhouse, who had gone to Harvard and decided not to go into physics but to go into dance. She then went to OSU and worked with me on and off for a few years before going and working for the last 7 years in the Forsyth Company in Germany. And those 2 solos are really breathtakingly brilliant, and it's the combination of her brilliance and what she brought to the table with what I asked her to do. A lot of times I'm working with people who I want specifically to work with because they have incredible qualities that I want to showcase and have them work with me on. So those are 3 pieces. One was called, I don't even remember, which is strange. One was a Baroque piece to Bach, and one was a piece to the Pastoral section of Beethoven's Pastoral Piano Concerto. And we called that Hunting the Hippogriff, because she liked that word. And the other word we just kind of made up that had something to do with a section of Baroque music. My latest and greatest passion is for a Swedish choreographer named Mats Ek, who is Bridget Kohlberg's son, who ran the Kohlberg Ballet in Sweden for many years and then did huge amounts of freelance choreography. He was interested in the early part of his career in taking the full classical music scores and redoing them with a very postmodern sensibility. And it kind of talks, and his work kind of talks to the idea of how in this time, in this place, and in this situation can someone continue to desire to create narrative work that continues to have a narrative threadline and story in it without being anachronistic, archaic, or really disloyal to the period of time that we live in. And he succeeded at that in an unbelievably brilliant fashion, and is, to me, one of the great people of our times. When we think about the people who came out of the stem cell of European dance, which is, of course, Yuri Killian and the Netherlands Dance Theater, the next 4 or 5 people who came out of that, who became amazing choreographers, are Forsyth, Mats Ek, Duato, and ultimately the people who are working throughout Europe now, the next generation, which is Crystal Pite, and a lot of the interesting people who are working through the form right now. So I was just talking about the lineage and history of European modern ballet, and it's the stem cell being Yuri Killian of the Netherlands Dance Theater. So, each generation creates from its own work the next generation of dance, and certainly those people are all the next generation of dance. And now we're looking at the second generation, or even the third generation of the people who came out of Forsyth, Mats Ek, and all of those people. So it becomes really an interesting historical concept as much as everything else. So the last question is advice for choreographers. And when I heard that I was going to be asked that, I found a really interesting quote from one of Agnes de Mille's books. At a certain point after Agnes had done her first 2 shows, she felt very depressed by her work, and as one of the mentees of Martha Graham, she went in tears to Martha Graham and told Martha Graham how much she disliked her work. And I'm going to read you Martha's answer to her, because it's for all choreographers or anybody who really wants to make art. There is a vitality, a life force an energy and a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with any other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, and to keep the channels open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channels open. And I think that's probably the best advice anyone could give you. Go to work. Thank you.